Rachel, it's great to have you on the Bainbridge podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So, Rachel Liaw is co-founder of Fuse Inventory, and I'm excited for this conversation because this is one of the hardest areas for a lot of the companies we work with. It's a super difficult problem for brands. So, I'm excited to kind of get into the nitty gritty, get into the weeds with you about it. But first, I think it would be really helpful for you to give your background, how you sort of came to Fuse, how you came up with the idea, and then give a little bit more of the of what you guys are doing and what makes you special, because you are very special in this space. So I want to make sure that comes through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career in supply chain. Actually, I started my career as a software developer, and then I restarted my career in supply chain actually as an operations intern, packing boxes in a warehouse. So it was definitely quite a jump from being, a software developer doing like natural language processing to then packing boxes in a warehouse, working my way up the supply chain. So I've done everything from inventory forecasting and planning, the FP&A side, all the way down to the fulfillment in the warehouse. I've spent a lot of time in sourcing, both with international suppliers as well as domestic suppliers, working with vendors, quality control, production management, warehouse operations, kind of the whole supply chain.
Wow.
And when I was doing that, just did not find technology very up to date in this space. Yeah.
Well, okay, so um, how in the world did you? I mean, going from software developer to be like, okay, let me get into the warehouse. That's a huge change. Like, what
Yeah.
prompted that?
I basically I enjoyed coding. Like I like the problem solving aspect of it. I think back when I was a software developer, it was just a different time. Everyone in the room would assume, I was working at companies, I was working at startups, and every time people would assume I was like the admin HR person or like marketing or like
Really?
executive assistant, even if I was like the lead developer. And I was just like really tired of it. I was really tired of not having a physical product. And so
Yeah.
I decided I wanted to do like problem solving with physical products. And so I joined a company called Kiwi Crate at the time. Now it's rebranded to Kiwi Co. And just wanted to get my hands into like what are some problems that companies and with physical goods are experiencing. And what I had assumed going in there, coming from the software side, like there would be tons of like amazing softwares like helping out these folks in the warehouse. And turns out everything was
It's
like
called
paper,
Excel.
pencil, Excel, CSV uploads. And one of my first tasks was helping them optimize their shop fulfillment. And it was literally like someone copy and pasting from a CSV file into a label generator. So I set up ShipStation at the time, was one of the softwares that was out in the market. This is like pre-Shopify days. And so we were,
What year is it? What year
yeah,
is this?
though other than Shopify and a lot of the shopping cart improvements, not much has really been fixed on the supply chain side. And so, you hear about robots fulfilling things at Amazon, but for your average 3PL and your average warehouse, it's very much like ship stations, ship this, ship that. On the OMS side, generating labels for you, but kind of above that, past order management, there's just this wide empty space of like Excel world. And
Yeah.
so we created Fuse to basically fuse all the data together. That's the idea behind the name. Get it, an end-to-end system that connects from Shopify to ShipStation and that can manage your inventory, everything in between that order shipping out and the order being placed, which kind of just happens in Excel these days.
All right, that's a lot. So let's like go through the sort of flow here. So if we go up for people that aren't like totally familiar with this space, okay, so I have an e-com store. Order comes in through Shopify. Now what was happening typically before Fuse?
Yeah, I think the way that people thought of the supply chain before was that it was linear. Or like, I think people
Okay.
coming into the space, they think it's linear. It's like, all right, like I find a product, I develop a product, I brand it, I order it, it comes to the warehouse, and then it gets shipped to my customer. And like, at the
Hmm.
basic level, that's what supply chain is. But I think what people don't realize is your demand fluctuates. You might have placed an order for your product and you realize it's actually a lot more popular or a lot less popular than you thought. Your
Yeah.
supplier runs into issues getting key raw materials and the production is delayed. It's not arriving in time when you thought it was going to. And so it's a lot of actually back and forth, a lot of collaboration with various parties, whether it's your own team, your design team. Hey, can we modify it so we can change an ingredient or change, a trim on the clothing so that we can get this done in time because we can't find the original component, or hey, you know what? Hey, manufacturer, can we move production down because this product's not selling well? We actually want to prioritize production for a different product. And so it's
Yeah.
actually like just a bunch of conversations all happening at once, and then you're trying to coordinate with your marketing department, be like, hey, don't promote that item that's not going to be here in time, or like, we schedule time to be on Oprah's favorite things, but Oprah's favorite thing isn't arriving for another month. And so it's things like that where it's got to be an open conversation, like, can we swap out the good, can we promote something else? And I think a lot of times, because there aren't systems that enable that, it's heavily reliant on like email. You hear stories. I mean, my email was kept open at QB Crate for many years after I left, and I'd get random emails like on a Sunday night. Do you remember what happened in October of like 2014? And like, what happened to
Yeah.
that one shipment of like Hanukkah candles? And so, that's the way that it happens today. And I think it's not as straightforward as like, I place the order, the thing arrives, I ship it out. It's really
Right.
like, okay, I place the order, I need to move up POs, I need to cancel POs, I need to modify the product, I need to communicate with my customer, communicate with my marketing team.
So yeah, I think that's a huge insight because I'll admit I've never been in operations at a brand, and I had much more of that kind of linear, simple.
I
I'm like,
mean, a
oh,
lot
okay,
of
things get stood
B2B
up.
founders or ecom founders, it's like their first time doing ops and sourcing. And I think the most common thing I hear like in forums and stuff is like, I didn't realize how hard it is to
Yeah,
source good quality product, and have
yeah,
it on time. And I think that's, yeah, the biggest like key learning. I think the companies that do operations right, they end up being the ones that last. And I think the ones that just try to like pretend operations don't exist or outsource all of it, or just basically only focus on customer acquisition and not what happens afterwards to make the customers
right.
happy, those are going to be the short-lived companies.
Yeah, and it sounds like so chaotic. I mean, so now Fuse comes in. So what does like of all those problems you described, does Fuse solve them, or which subset do you?
Yeah, so we do, we're primarily a planning system, but we actually just released a bunch of features around materials resource planning and vendor management as well. And
Wow.
so I kind of think of us as everything, you know, between, as I mentioned, between Shopify and an OMS.
Yeah.
The ordering, the planning, the purchasing, the forecasting of the inventory, all the way until the inventory arrives at the warehouse and can be quality verified, quality checked, and deemed ready to ship to the customer. We handle everything in that white space in between. And I
Nice.
think that's what differentiates us from, I think a lot of times people will mix us up with an inventory management solution or an order management solution with inventory tracking, where it's
Yeah.
more about like, how much do I have in each warehouse location? Like what gets shipped out of which warehouse? Like we don't handle that. We really handle like getting that inventory into the warehouse in good condition from the right suppliers at the best possible cost, not overbuying, not stocking out.
Yeah. And you mentioned another specialty of Fuse was really around, you guys had a lot of tooling and capabilities around brands that are assembling or building or making their own products, taking raw materials into a finished. Explain
Yeah.
why that's more complicated and hard to do.
Yeah, I think as brands scale, almost every brand I see too that starts just ordering finished goods from their co-packer or their filler, in CPG, or even in apparel, like they're buying the finished good from the cut and sew factory. Inevitably, if you have something that's differentiating about your product, whether it's a key ingredient in skincare or like a special sustainable fabric in apparel, you end up managing that raw material. And so, as companies are scaling, they need to manage those raw materials, whether it's just one or two key ones, or just packaging, or they're managing every single component. Some of our clients are really key in the clean beauty space, and they really care about every single ingredient. They need to manage all of that. And so with that added complexity, especially if you have multiple levels of bill of materials, you've got, how many drops of argan oil go into your shampoo, and then how much shampoo goes into the bottle. And then you have a travel size, a 16-ounce, 32-ounce bottle, and then you sell it in a pack of shampoo and conditioner. That's like multiple levels of bill of materials. Managing that in Excel is quite difficult. You often make mistakes. You don't have a key ingredient at the right place at the right time to do your production. And so what we did was make sure that the platform was flexible enough to handle finished goods, as well as these raw materials, these kits and components, packaging, things like that. And we can even do like order level collateral. So like, your shipper boxes, your welcome cards, things like that. Because I noticed a lot of people are just managing that in an outside spreadsheet outside of their normal inventory systems.
And you guys can handle everything to the finish. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, bundling. Like we actually even have like variant bundles. I think we're the only one in the space that can handle like if you let your customers, let's say they're choosing a eyeshadow and a lipstick, and they can choose whatever color eyeshadow, whatever color lipstick they want. We can actually do variant bundles as well and predict like, of the customers that buy this duo, like 50% will get brown, 50% will get black of the eyeshadow, and then, 20% will get red, 20% pink, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow. Okay. And so the where it stops though is tracking the inventory levels. That's one area that you stop at. It sounds like.
We do track the on-hand levels, but we're not necessarily going to be tracking like, okay, we from the counting perspective, we damaged this many out, or we consumed this batch, so we can write off this unit cost before this unit cost. I think that's what a lot of ERP systems like focus on, and that's not what our core capabilities are. We sit on top of the systems, and then we read in the unit costs and the on-hand levels.
Got it. What if someone's not using Fuse, what would be like? Are they wasting money? Is it like what are some of the financial implications of doing this better?
Yeah, I mean, I think the immediate financial implication is going to be your inventory levels and how much working capital it ties up.
Okay. So explain that.
Generally,
Yeah.
generally as a brand is scaling at first, if you've found a product that people love, you're going to experience stockouts. It's just going to keep flying off the shelves. You can't keep it in stock. And then what I notice commonly is people then overbuy. They're like, you know what, like I keep increasing my buys. It only got me 3 months instead of 2 months. I'm just going to like massively buy and hope that I don't stock out because my customers are getting mad that I don't have the product. And then they massively over purchase, and then they're sitting on inventory glut that's not moving. Almost every kind of inventory has some sort of expiration date. Even if durable goods like clothing will have fade levels. Skincare products, though they have long shelf lives, they still will expire in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And so then you're sitting on this inventory glut. There's like a little like ticking in the background as you're starting to calculate like when is this inventory obsolete. You want to free up working capital so you can introduce new products and new shades and new styles and new excitement to the brand, but you don't have the capital to because it's tied up in inventory. And so then a lot of people end up starting to do like discounts, things like that, which ends up hurting the brand. So I think the immediate value add is like we generally help our customers reduce inventory overspend by about 70%, and we help reduce 70%.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, we just published a case study with one of our customers, suit shop, and they said 75% for them. So and one of our customers, generally we reduce stockouts by like 10%, but we just surveyed Margot, and they were like 40% for us. So it's really like a core ROI around your cash flow.
Yeah.
And I think, beyond that, there's brand reputation, customer experience. You don't want to be a discounting brand. You don't want to be the brand that spends all of this money on like Instagram ads to drive someone to a stocked out product.
Right.
And I have more experience in that brand damage that's harder to measure, but is definitely, top of mind for a lot of e-com brands.
Yeah. That's really amazing. I mean, 70%. So what is, you said 70% inventory overspend. So are you saying like their annual inventory spend for the year times 0.7 is So,
or the inventory
or the
spent
inverse, I guess.
on products that they have overbought in. So what we actually do
Oh, okay.
in our product
Got it.
is measure every single inventory level and weeks of supply target that they wanted to be at. And then
Yeah.
if you're over your weeks of supply target or you're under your weeks of supply target, we're able to show that
Yeah.
number to every single SKU.
God, that's like, I mean, so when somebody puts Fuse in, they could like very quickly see the reductions in working capital, free up
Yeah.
more cash. Um,
We have a weeks of supply report that literally has an indicator and it'll show you how much you overstocked for the whole business and how much you understocked for the business. And the idea is like you're never going to be zero, right? Like you're never
right,
going to be perfectly able to predict demand and the world goes
right.
exactly the way you think. I think the pandemic has taught all of us that. But you can get better by an order of magnitude. You know, you can go from
Yeah,
being overstocked like hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars and reduce that to, 30% of what that was. And so
yeah,
that's really the core value out of Fuse and why we work with a lot of fast growth brands. I think when you're a smaller company just getting your footing in the space, you can get by with spreadsheets. It's when you're really
yeah,
scaling, you're starting to hold like significant amounts of inventory, that it really makes a big difference to reduce that glut, and reduce the stock outs.
yeah, yeah. One thing that we've noticed is with fast growth brands is that because they're growing so quickly, they are often like applying the habits of a year or two ago to their current problems. Like we see it in financial modeling and planning. You know, do you see that? That like people are sort of like, "Oh, this is how we've been doing it for the past couple of years." Like, or
Yeah, we
is
definitely see
it
that.
like,
We definitely see that, especially during the onboarding process when they first look at that report and they're like, "Wow!" Like we knew we had. A lot of times, even during the sales process, we'd be like, "How often are you stocking out? How much overstock do you guys have?" And a lot of times people would be like, "We know it's a lot," and like in the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands, but they can't put a number to it. They just know they
yeah,
have a problem, and then when they hop into Fuse and they see that number in front of them, they're like, "Oh, it was like 750,000. It was like 2 million." Okay, then
yeah,
they really start to think about that ROI and change that behavior because I think unless you see that hard number, just knowing you have a problem and not like confronting it,
right,
can really snowball, especially if you're a fast growth brand and you're expanding new channels, retail expansion, things like that. It's like, oh, okay. Like things that were maybe like a few $1,000s of problem that you could ignore now are like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands as you scale like
yeah,
3x.
yeah. I wonder if like if you could almost do like a cash, like a working capital savings, cash savings, dilution savings for the founders. You're like, hey, we could have saved you like 3% dilution. Like, oh,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah. That would be an interesting
Right? Because
like
they're like they're
plan.
losing all this money, and they're like, well, of course I don't spend it on inventory, but money's
I think
fungible.
it's the surprising, spend. A lot of people are very worried because they're measuring, their CAC. They're like,
Yeah,
okay, I spent this much on ads this month. I spent this much on
right,
PR. I spent this much on CAC. What's my lifetime value? And because those metrics are so easy to measure nowadays, people are
right.
looking at that, but they're not looking at their FP&A overall. They're not looking at how much is inventory costing my organization. Like it's
Yeah,
usually a surprise, like the founder is like so busy, like getting the brand out there, getting it, running that it's usually, it's like an afterthought to be like, oh my gosh, actually,
that's
all my
right.
money is going to not just salaries and but inventory. And a lot of
Sitting on
times
the
I ask
shelf
founders,
out
and they're like,
there.
oh,
Yeah,
our second biggest spend's marketing, and I'm like, are you sure? And then they like look at their documents and they're like, oh, it's actually inventory.
yeah,
Second largest spend usually is inventory, not marketing.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny because when you were talking about like stock outs and then the other side of being working capital reductions, I was thinking like to myself, like I bet internally the ops person fears stockouts more than over allocating capital because like when they stock out, like you're probably getting an email from the CEO like, what the hell did you do?
Yes.
Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, we did an email campaign, on the sales side once that was like stocking out on SKU one, two, three. And then like people were like, this is not productive. You gave me a heart attack. I thought my CEO was emailing me, and we're like, okay, let's not do that campaign anymore. So we stopped that campaign. But yeah, it's when you hear from the CEO, when you get that email at like 2 a.m. is like, why are we stocked out on our bestseller? How did this
Yeah,
happen?
yeah, exactly. So then they're like, I'll never make that mistake again. And like,
Yep.
just
Yep.
give me $1
But
million. Man, buy a
oftentimes it's not so simple as like buying more, and that's why I see that problem happening where people, they're like, because they got a couple of these emails, they're stocking out, they're growing
yeah,
so much, they thought they ordered enough, they ordered more, and they're still stocking out. That's where you get that overstock, and then suddenly you're sitting on, just a ton of inventory that's not moving fast enough, and then you
yeah,
have the opposite problem, and it's kind of almost something that people don't even realize until they get their next FP&A report, and then they're like, oh, wait, my
yeah,
accountants, are you sure you like didn't calculate this wrong? Why am I sitting on so much working capital tied up in my inventory?
right,
And then
right.
that's when people start getting tempted with, can I do discounts? Can I get rid of this somehow?
Well, that's like, and you're so right about the discounts. I mean, I guess if it's expiring, you don't have much of a choice.
Yeah.
But like,
Even, I was actually talking to one of the investors in Everlane, and they were saying like they had just found a bunch of inventory they didn't even realize they still had. Um, and they had to do a massive sale because it's not like that the clothing goes bad, but it's no longer fits with their merchandise assortment. It's no longer
right,
trending. It's no longer, doesn't match everything else on the website. It doesn't look cohesive.
right,
And so you just end up trying to get rid of it in any way possible. And it can be,
yeah,
hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of inventory for some of these brands.
yeah. You've seen so many of these operations now. Like, what are some hallmarks or common best practices? Like, when what distinguishes a great ops team from like one that's just average?
Yeah, I think it's the same as hiring for other teams. You want people who are able to see the big picture but have attention to detail. Like I feel like inventory planners are the most detail oriented people ever because they're looking at like 10,000 lines of inventory, making sure every single one of them is bought properly. But they also still have to be able to see the big picture, understand where the spend is going, the priorities of the organization, how they can support the big initiatives for the organization. And I think the other thing that I think the big difference that I see from, say, a traditional retailer and like an ecom brand is some econ brands, like they'll hire like a general business analyst or a general like junior inventory analyst to manage everything, but not necessarily give like strategic direction as to where they need to invest in for the business. And I think the better run companies are the ones that hire people who have a background in inventory planning, in operations, who can maybe be that like VP of ops or have hired a VP of ops that can give that strategic direction. And it's not just someone like crunching numbers on a spreadsheet and then not
Hmm.
like really thinking holistically about where to invest. And so that's where software like Fuse also comes in, where we say like, okay, well, which products, which SKUs do you want to have a higher weeks of supply so that you don't stock
Right,
out on your best sellers, your core products, and which ones can you maybe go a little bit leaner on because you may not have
right,
the budget to order everything equally. And what I see a lot is a lot of people just doing a spreadsheet with like a percentage, and they're like, buy this distribution because that's how we've typically sold it. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
did you typically sell it like that because that's what you had available, or because that
yeah,
was true demand? Like maybe you were
right,
stocked out on a period, and so a really good ops person would be like, okay, I know that we actually stocked out from June to August on our bestseller, and that's why it looks falsely low. I need to order up on that.
so
And
they
or
like
we
go
ran a
in.
marketing event, but we're not running that same one, so we're not going to see a big lift in this product.
So would they go in and like gross up the stock out to kind of like what they thought the demand would have been? Or is there a way to measure the
It's so
demand?
painful in an Excel that what a lot of companies do today is just look at the last 16, 32 weeks of sales and put like a gross multiplier to it. Like, oh, it's holiday season, like make that 60% more. And they don't
Yeah,
have capacity, especially if you're managing like 100 SKUs to go through and say like, okay, well, this SKU stocked out in this time period. And we see this very often in shoe and apparel, because
Okay.
they're always planning at a style level and then they apply a general size distribution. And
Yeah.
the reality is like you're by looking at the style level, you're not looking at did this style sell really low because all we had left were like extra, extra, extra small and like extra,
Right.
extra, extra large. Um, and certain styles might fit, like larger bodies better than others. And so certain
Right.
styles, you might actually your bestseller is a large, and the other style, your bestseller is a small. And
Yeah.
so, because they're just applying like a generic sales curve across the entire organization, which again might be skewed by the fact that you weren't in stock on certain style like sizes, they always get it wrong. They're not able to fix
Yeah.
it. And so, what we can do is actually tag like, okay, you were out of size medium on this style from this date to this date, and this is what we think it would have done
Yeah.
otherwise. And like, here's your true size distribution, not just based on your historic sales, but based on what your historic sales layered with data validation on top of it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. You drawn this distinction between e-com and retail in the ops people. Were you sort of implying or saying that like better ops people tend to come out of retail because
Yes and no. I think experienced ops people come out of retail,
sure.
but retail has its own way of doing things. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes that way of doing things is not the most modern. So, like, some
Yeah.
people are very married to that, like, 16-week average sell through rate plus XYZ, or like a lot of retailers will be like, oh, tie it to this like one curve of this one product that performed in the past, which is like a very like, well, this blue shirt may not be like that blue shirt, but you're just using that information because that's the best you have. Whereas what we can do is like tag things, have use predictive analytics, and actually say like, okay, well, blue shirts were a big part of your organization, 2 years ago when you had a similar style, but nowadays, like, what's trending are red shirts. And so, like, even though that style is very similar, you can't really use that exact curve because your business has changed, because the style is different, because various parts about your business have changed. Your demographics, now that you've expanded to Canada, are different, things like that. And I think so. I wouldn't say that the best ops people are from retail. I think experienced ops people tend to come from retail, but I think it's someone who, like any hiring situation, has experience enough that they can be dangerous, but not like, oh, this is the way I did it for 10 years, so I'm never
Right.
going to change.
Never
Like,
gonna change.
this is what I did for 10 years for your business. I'm going to modify the knowledge I've had for 10 years, and
Yeah.
make it suitable for your business.
Yeah. You know, so many brands are going omni-channel. This
Yeah.
sounds like it would be incredible levels of complexity. What happens when you start going omni-channel to these
Yeah,
problems?
that's a great question. So what we see happen, and I've actually headed Kiwi Crate's like efforts into Target, and so I've worked with these retailers. I've worked with Costco, Target, Walmart, and like, I think the big difference is these large retailers, they've got a lot of bargaining leverage. So a lot of times they will give you a forecast. They'll be like, "This is our forecast of how you're going to perform in Target stores," and it's from their buyers, et cetera, et cetera. But until you get sell-through data, it's all just like very like in the air. But they require you to hold that inventory. You're like obligated contractually to hold enough inventory to support their replen, so that when they do want to replenish, you ship it out to them like within a certain time frame. Otherwise, you get a bad vendor score. You're not going to be promoted, et cetera. And so these retailer relationships are really tricky to manage, especially if you still, need inventory to support your DTC, but you don't want to hold a lot of like inventory glut in case the retailer doesn't place that second order. And I'm not even going into all the labeling requirements, which usually causes SKU proliferation within our brands, because then they have
Think
like
about
Target
that.
specific packaging, Walmart specific packaging. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's about being able to quickly get that sell-through data, which usually is not in the form of the EDI order that you get from Walmart. Like, Walmart will just be like, we placed an order for 20,000, right? And then like 2 months later, they're like, we placed another order for 20,000. And then like 3 months later, they're like, now we want 10,000. And then 4 months later, they're like, now we want 60,000. How do you
That's
predict
literally
that?
what you get back. You just get these like lump
You just get
sums.
these giant POs and lump sums, right? If you're lucky, and or your product's already well established in the stores, they might do it every 2 weeks. So like if you're getting a good cadence, they'll be like, okay, every 2 weeks, here's what we expect, and it's more or less the same. But for a lot of brands, especially when they just start, it's like huge number of SKUs, tons of working capital, and just like very arbitrary timelines and amounts. And
Yeah.
so what we do with our customers is actually take a look at the weekly CSV sell through. So like Nordstrom, Target, all of these folks, they will either email you like a CSV file from their listserv, or give you a login to their portal where they will like upload a weekly sell through report so that you can start to see what is selling through at the shelves. So you have this data. A lot of people are just like saving them all to like their box or their Google Drive somewhere and like doing a one-off analysis every once in a while. But I think what's really nice about a system like Fuse is being able to see that real time, being able to get that into a system where you're constantly looking at the report so that you can estimate like, hey, you know what, we sent them like 20,000 and they're selling through like X amount of units every week. The next PO is likely to come in on this date.
Yeah.
And, either more or less than, the previous PO.
Right. Right. Boy, that's a hard problem because yeah, you have to make sure you have enough to satisfy them and
Mm-hmm.
accurately predict, depending on how long it takes you to produce or get your stuff,
Yep.
have what
It's
you
very
think is.
different from like boutique wholesale where you're selling to like boutiques and they order smaller quantities every few weeks
Yeah.
for like a 20% discount. These retailers are going to want like a 50% discount. They're going to want minimum X like quantities on hand at all times so that they can place a replenishment order and get it within 5 days, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have
And
to
what
get really
happens?
creative.
What happens if you get it wrong as a brand? You mentioned the bad vendor score. Like, can you recover, or is like Target like, oh, thanks guys, like see you later?
It really depends. I think it's two factors. One of them is like how popular is your product? How much
Mm.
upside do they think they're going to have? How many doors is it selling through? Usually they start with a test though, and so if you fail that test, you're screwed. So most people will over order for the test. Usually the test will not. It'll be like middling, right? And then they need to expand to more doors, and then that's where it starts to get really difficult. And so
Wait,
the
say that again. So there's usually a test period.
Yeah, where
Like how
they,
long?
and it's like, how many doors are you in? Like, are you in all the West Coast doors, or are you in like the West Coast and East Coast doors, or like, are you in like 1,000 doors or 3,000
Okay.
doors?
So if you're in like 500 doors or West Coast, you're in the test. And
Yeah.
how long does that usually go for?
I mean, usually is like your first PO, and then they just see how it performs.
Okay, so you might know in a month or something.
You might know in a month or something, and that's from the data perspective. I think the real thing is with Target and these big retailers, there's also a human component. You're working directly. Oftentimes, you're not only just working with a Target buyer, but with like some sort of like I call them go-betweens, but there's an official name for them.
Yeah,
Broker. There's like brokers that,
yeah,
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 and so oftentimes you have to go through like a licensed broker to
yeah,
sell to these stores. So it's like, how good is your broker? How good is their relationship with the buyers for these stores, with Target corporate? That will give you a little bit more leeway, I think.
yeah,
If
yeah.
things go wrong, or if you notice like, hey, this test is not performing well because like you didn't put us in the area on the shelf that you said you would. Like for Kiwi Crate on our launch, we actually went to the local Target stores that we were supposed to be stocked at, and we noticed like, hey, our products are not on the shelf they said they were supposed to be on, and we had to go back and be like, hey, you said you're going to put us at eye level at the kids aisle, and like we're on the very top of the shelf where no kid's going to see it. They're not going to,
Right.
their parents to buy it if it's like, they can't even see it.
Yeah. And do they care when you say that, or are they like,
That's where your broker and your buyer come in. If you have a really good one, they will advocate for you. They will call the stores. They will, make sure it happens. And if you have a not so great one, you're out of luck, and you got to find
yeah.
another one.
It's like amazing, isn't it? How D2C is hard enough, and then you're like, here's this whole different world of these
It's a
giant
different beast, yeah.
ways to break you. So let's talk
You
about
just
another
don't have as
giant.
much control. Like you can't just be like, let me increase like my marketing spend or decrease it.
Yeah,
Like you gotta be like
yeah,
on the phone with someone being like, hey, please move my products up like 3 levels on the shelf.
yeah, exactly. It's like, wait, I'm calling store by store to do this? Like,
Yeah. And then the
um,
store manager is going to be like, what are you talking about? And you have to
yeah,
like go back to corporate. They have to issue a direct. It's a whole nother beast. Yeah.
yeah. tell me about Amazon. How does Amazon differ from D2C or retail?
Yeah. So, well, I think when you talk about Amazon, there's FBA, FBM, and then there's also like online of the retailers, which we haven't crossed yet, which is like Target.com or like
Right.
like Madeville.com. Like you can actually sell through those where it's fulfilled by merchant. It's more like a marketplace disguised as Target.com.
Yeah.
And so, I
So
think
if you're
Amazon
in FBA, because I
those.
mean that's let's say
Yeah.
let's just pick FBA. Like, does it change the kind of ops
From a
cadence?
planning and procurement perspective, not so much because
Okay.
it's like you almost have like another warehouse that you're just sending things to. So if you're already operating like maybe out of two, 3PLs so that you have bi-coastal coverage, adding another 3PL is not a like a huge headache. If you are, however, like if you've never done more than one 3PL location or warehouse location, it could be like the first time you have to manage inventory in multiple locations, and that definitely makes it harder in Excel. And the other thing about FBA is you have to have like either your own warehouse or 3PL partner that can store pallets that go to FBA as well, because FBA will not hold pallets for you if until you get a certain allocation, and it's costly for them to hold pallets, but you have to be able to send them pallets, as they need it, so that your
Right.
vendor score is good. It's kind of like a hybrid between like a retailer and ecom. And so you do need to have a 3PL that is able to do FBA pallets pretty seamlessly, because like not all 3PLs can handle that. Most
Yeah.
of them are designed for just their own pick and pack and not like managing your pallets that you send to FBA.
What what's the sign for a company that, like, man, we really need to get our arms around this? Is it the sales? Is it the multi,
It's
omni? Is it
I think a lot of times people think it's like revenue or like number of SKUs. For me, it's usually I try to measure it as a number of complexities. So, number of forecasting channels is like our primary indicator. So, if you're in like Target and Costco and you have D2C and you have DTC like Canada or like Amazon FBA, FBM, like once you start to have a lot of proliferation of different sales channels, that's where your complexity increases. I think we just chatted a bunch about a bunch of like different
sure?
details that you have to track. But it's not just the operations. Like your demand for each one of these channels will be very different. The kind of products people buy, the way you have to manage the replenishment is going to be very different. And Amazon, oh, I should also mention like their FBA has a whole nother problem of like list hijackers who hijack your listing and have like lower quality products, and Amazon
Right.
have good controls because all of them are like labeled with the same barcode, so their pick and pack will just pick and pack, and you don't really have control if someone hijacks your listing and sends like low quality products. But anyways, I'm getting
Yeah.
on a tangent there. But yeah, I think it's in the number of like sales channels, that amount of complexity. Number of warehouse locations could be another way you add complexity. Or as you start to get into raw materials management, if you're just doing one or two key ingredients, it's usually not too bad. But once you start, doing packaging, once you start having multiple levels of bill of materials, that's when you need something like Fuse or some sort of more,
Yeah.
high level system. And then that's when I usually see people start to buy NetSuite, but NetSuite doesn't solve all of their problems.
Right. So
Yeah.
you guys would work in conjunction with NetSuite, it sounds like.
Yeah, we would work in conjunction with NetSuite. NetSuite will solve your like unit costing problems, your inventory tracking problems. But what it doesn't solve is your demand forecasting,
Yeah.
figuring out like what's the appropriate levels for each single SKU that you want to be restocking at each, sales channel. Yeah.
What are signs that ops is like gone off the rails? If you were a CEO or founder, I mean, there's so much going on that you can sort of have conversations internally,
Mhm.
and it's like, I don't know, is it this thing or is it like, what are some signs that it's just gone off the rails and they need to make a change?
Yeah, I think usually the first time it really come like so there are some CEOs who have backgrounds in ops, and so they're keeping a close eye on their inventory at all
Yeah.
times. I think a lot of times people come from the branding or the advertising or the product development side, and they usually don't notice until there's a massive overstock. Um,
So it
yeah,
shows up like they're like, wait a second, we don't have any cash left because we bought so much
Yeah,
inventory.
it's like, oh, we're going to launch this new product and launch this new campaign. Wait, why is our cash flow like not where we thought it would be? Crap,
Yeah,
it's inventory. And I think that's usually the first sign, and when we start to see people, really think about an inventory system.
that makes sense. Let's switch gears a little bit, like to the economy. We're talking on December 1st of 22. So we just got through Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
Were you surprised at how strong it was, or was it what you expected?
I I mean, I honestly I went into it like 50-50. I was like, it's either gonna be a great Black Friday or it's gonna be a like not so great Black Friday, and then we're gonna have like a massive amount of like January sales, and like everyone would be like very sad about their performance. So I think I'm glad to see that it was, a great Black Friday for most folks. I think a lot of times like people, read the news, read the macroeconomics, and start to project that into their daily lives. But the reality is like you can only control what you can control. So you can only control your own Black Friday sales, your own Black Friday
Yeah,
promotions, and just like hope for the best. And so I think, I'm glad to see that people generally had very strong performance, and I think people were smart about the kind of promotions that they were offering. I think what I did notice was a big difference between more traditional retailers and like Shopify merchants. Shopify merchants obviously like blew it out of the park. Whereas like I think more traditional retailers, they had to discount like massively. They're probably like I see a lot of like Cyber Monday extended sales, things like that. And so it's
what do you
definitely,
think drove that? Why that difference?
I think when you are larger, I think a lot of brands were really smart about their working capital this year. I think they learned a lot from 2021. Just from what I saw in the industry, 2021 was like year of stockouts, but then a lot of that inventory arrived mid 2022 when no one was buying. And then so
Right.
all of these, ecom brands had like a ton of inventory just sitting on their shelves like in June, July, wasn't moving. They just doing summer sales of like winter clothes, things like that. And so I think they got smarter and were a little bit more conscientious of like what kind of inventory they were investing in. And we saw that with our own clients as well, like, okay, we're going to really invest in the core SKUs that we think are going to perform well and not just like buy across the board. I think when you're larger and you have more capital and you're not forced to be as scrappy, and when you have a lot more pull, so like Target, Walmart, those folks were able to get their inventory in time for Q4, Q1 because they
Yeah.
could rent container ships, because they could do things like pull up, their vendors and make sure that the vendors serve them first. And so they didn't go through as painful of a learning as a lot of the, I
Right.
think, e-com and like younger brands did.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys have such interesting data sets. You must have your customers in aggregate must have a view of what 23 is holding. Do you see indications that they think it's going to be good, or are people kind of worried and you
Yeah,
know,
I think there's always, and because I talked to a lot of founders as well, there's always worries about the macroeconomics. Like I'm sure you and I worry about macroeconomics as well. And I think it's
Yep.
about, and I think what I can offer to our clients is that real-time visibility, that they can actually stay on top of their numbers, be able to detect the first signs of things not performing well and be able to change it then. But I think what we've seen, and so far at least, is that business as usual. Like we had a strong holiday performance so far. I think it'll continue to be strong. I think, people are still willing to buy things. There's, Christmas is still there. I feel like there's a renewed emphasis on family since the pandemic, or people are
Mhm.
gathering. And so um, I think what we're seeing is people are already placing their POs for, Chinese New Year and all of that.
That's
Is that it's business as usual, but always with an eye out of any
yeah,
changes, any indicators that you need to react quickly to. And so, if you don't have that good reporting yet and you're a founder, you need that reporting because you need to be able to
yeah.
react quickly. But you don't want to, like, if you don't buy inventory, you can't sell anything, and then you will by definition not perform well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you don't want that, right? You still want to be able to purchase and run your business like it's going to perform well. Otherwise, you shoot yourself in the foot.
Right.
But you have to be ready to be able to adapt and trim down if you see those signs. And so that's really kind of what I've been advocating for our clients and what I've seen.
That's interesting. Do they, how do they think of it at a high level? Are they thinking like days inventory on hand or days sales, or like what are some of the metrics that people are using to know if they're right sized in their buying?
Yeah, so generally we use weeks of supply, and we use a forward looking weeks of supply rather than a backwards looking. And so what I mean by that is like 10 weeks of supply during the holiday season might be 10,000 units. 10 weeks of
Okay.
supply during the low selling season might be like 5,000 units or 2,000 units.
Okay.
So always keeping that forward looking weeks of supply helps you right size your inventory amounts depending where you are in the year. Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're doing
And
it
but
seasonality. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
But being able to do it at a SKU level, I think a lot of times people just kind of look at their, because of the lack of granularity, or the, your Excel can only have 10,000 lines and
Sure.
you have all these variants and color waves and things like that. Being able to do it at a granular level and be able to like bucket, like, okay, certain core products, I'm going to have a higher weeks of supply because they're my best sellers. They're my most profitable products. I don't want to stock out on them. Maybe some
Yeah.
seasonal patterns, seasonal scents, seasonal fragrances, can be a little bit leaner on. And so I think and then you can also adjust that ratio based on what you're seeing. So maybe something that was an underperformer before is starting to become really hot. It's trending now. You can
Mm.
then, quickly increase that weeks of supply target for that product, and maybe lower your weeks of supply target from some other products that aren't performing as well. So having that flexibility and the ability to react quickly at a very granular level is what I've been seeing with our clients, and what I do advocate for a lot of founders.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Um, Rachel, anything else? Did I miss anything?
Oh, I mean, I can talk about supply chain for hours, so we could keep going. But I think we've talked a lot about the best practices, kind of like going into the next year. I think
Yeah.
the only other like major theme that I have for folks is just paying attention to the global like geopolitics. I think that's going to be huge in the upcoming months, upcoming years.
Well, what
With
are you saying specifically there? I mean, what is?
Yeah, so I think in general, I think the biggest one on the horizon is, I think all eyes are on China right now, and
Yeah.
what that's going to look like. You know, I think previously we saw Brexit during the pandemic. So if you were sourcing from the UK or selling to the UK, there were huge headaches around customs there. Um,
Mm.
and you saw the Russia invading Ukraine, what that did to gas and to wheat, and to a
Hmm.
lot of things that are sourced from Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe has a lot of good industries that where you can get like high quality but reasonably priced manufacturing, and so a lot of
Mm.
folks source from there. And
Okay.
so that's going to be, I think, a continual concern as you start to see like blackouts, and whether or not the Grecian accidental missiles accidentally hitting Poland. That there are a lot of
Right.
Eastern European countries right next door that supply like key products to a lot of customers. And so that's going to be on the radar. And anything that's changing in the world is going to be focused on. But I think China is probably the biggest one in people's minds, because we've already been in a trade war with China for many years. I think a lot of people with the pandemic forgot that we started a trade war with them in like 2017, 2018, and we're still in a trade war with them.
Right.
And that's unlikely to stop.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing a lot of the inflation comes from a lot of costs being higher due to that trade war.
Yeah.
So a lot of production moving to Vietnam, Cambodia, things like that. But I think if there is ever any sort of like armed conflict over Taiwan, I mean, semiconductors are just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that obviously
Right.
affects a lot of companies like Apple. So, our economy, that'll be interesting. But, that means you cut off access to, maybe even India and Pakistan because of the uncertainty around the freight containers in the Pacific Ocean. And so there could be huge ripple effects there. And so I think one of the things I've advocated even pre-pandemic was vendor redundancy, being able to have multiple vendors that can source similar products.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm hoping will be more in people's conversations, because even before the pandemic, like I remember getting a postcard from Function of Beauty, and they were like, we can't ship any shampoo this holiday season because our one factory in Houston, like there was a hurricane and we can't ship anything out.
Right.
Like, you know, it's like stuff like that, where it's like, if you only have one vendor and any sort of, even not geopolitical, but climate change related action happens, you know, if you were sourcing out of Indonesia, and then now you probably can't source out of that region, and that was your one supplier, you're kind of screwed. And so having that vendor redundancy, something, you know, maybe a lower cost further abroad where you can, you know, take advantage of those cost savings, but maybe something also closer, you know, that nearshoring, reshoring initiative. But I think from a practical perspective, you know, being able to ramp up things faster, maybe producing high demand volatility products closer so that you can ramp up, ramp down, like really trendy products, you know, that the black t-shirt that always sells, you can always just produce that at a better cost, maybe further away. So I think that's the other big theme that we're going to see in 2023 that I think, you know, should be in people's conversations and people's radars a little bit more.
Man, this has been awesome. Thanks, Rachel. This has been a terrific, it's like a tour de force of insights and supply chain and ops wisdom. And it's been fun for me because this is not an area that I ever get to go in much details on.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to talk supply chain for hours, so always happy to chat about supply chain anytime.
Cool. Well, thank you, Rachel.
All right, thanks, Ben. It was a pleasure.